Good morning, afternoon, and evening. This is the FGEN Experience, documenting interviews and conversations between first-generation students at the University of Portland. In this episode, we explore the relationship between first-generation mentor and first-generation mentee with our fellow ambassador, Grace Hunter, and her apprentice, if you will, from the 2020 through 2021 school year, Victoria Vargas. Their bond proved to stand the test of time through a school year entirely online, and they were reunited this past summer to build on their shared interests. Recorded over Zoom on June 10th, 2021, we hope you enjoy.
Hello. I guess we should probably introduce ourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
You can go first.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Victoria Vargas. I am now a sophomore at UP in the School of Nursing, which is super exciting, and I'm going to pass it on to Grace.
Hi everyone. I'm Grace Hunter, and I'm a junior nursing student, and I was Victoria's FGEN mentor for freshman year, so last year. So yeah. Do we want to start with one of the questions?
Yeah. Okay. I would say let's start with the second one. So it says, could you tell us about your cultural background? Would you like to start, Grace?
Sure. I think for my cultural background, I don't know, I feel like with like culture, sometimes I feel like I think of like family kind of almost. Like I come like my roots, like I'm half Canadian on my dad's side, but then on my mom's side, like I have Mexican roots, and I have like a big family, and I don't know, I feel like in my life, like kind of that's always been like really important to me, I think because of that. Like family is like my number one kind of. Um and it's like kind of interesting because like I always like kind of knew about like my Canadian roots or whatever, but like my Mexican roots, it wasn't something that I really knew about or was really like talked about in my family, just because my great grandparents came here from immigrated from Mexico, but like my grandma like didn't really like talk about it, and like my mom didn't learn Spanish or anything, and neither did my aunt and uncles. So I don't know, that wasn't really a big part of my life until like I'm got older, and now I'm older, and like hearing all the stories of like my great grandpa and just all that, and like asking more questions. I feel like when I was like middle school, high school, I was like asking so many questions about like my family and like where I come from and stuff. And I guess that would be kind of like my cultural background. But yeah, I know we've kind of talked about it before, Victoria, but what about you?
Yeah, well, I'm originally born and raised New Mexican, so I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And there's a very beautiful and unique culture here that I feel connected to just because I was raised here. Of course, that is Hispanic, but it's a little bit different from what you would think from the culture in Mexico. We do incorporate a lot of Native American traditions in our culture, which is really beautiful, really unique. One of the biggest things that defines my culture, I would say my cultural background, is chili, New Mexican chili. It is
The chili.
not, yes, the chili. It's literally not just like a food item, but it's kind of like life. And, you know, it's one of those big things that define us, and was super hard coming to, you know, Portland because I'm so used to spicy food and being able to cook all of these different meals. I would always say, like, when I would go to a burger place, like, oh, this needs green chili. Or like I'd have some rice and I'd be like, oh yeah, this needs some red chili. And so that was a huge part that I think is a part of my cultural background. There's also a part of my background as a Hispanic that's different, just because I know there was a lot of discrimination with speaking Spanish in previous generations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been kind of a disconnection from my culture, just because I was never able to actually learn Spanish because my family never wanted to teach it to us. But it's still really nice to be connected to my family and, like you said, be able to talk about these stories and hear them and be able to continue that tradition on of just being able to talk with each other, which I think is beautiful and is something that isn't very normal nowadays with technology. Everyone's on their phones, but yeah, it's, I think, beautiful to be able to sit down and just continue on those stories and just listen. And I think that's another part that defines a little bit of my cultural background as well.
Yeah. I think especially what you were saying with like how kind of like like you didn't like speak Spanish, kind of like my mom's from a small town, my grandparents are from a small town in Oregon, so being like the minority, kind of like, I think you just, at least what I've heard from their experience, it's like you just kind of want to fit in. And my grandma was very much like fit in. I mean, I think she was proud of who she was and like where she came from, but I think it was definitely like, don't draw attention to yourself, like try and fit in. And so I think that was always kind of a struggle, and like, obviously stereotyping that comes with that. And like, I think my grandpa now, like since she's passed, he's like, oh, I wish like grandma would have taught like my mom like the children Spanish or like everything like that. So yeah, I think that's definitely like, I think the generation, I think where our grandparents came from, what they had to go through kind of in that. And yeah, for sure though. Yeah. Oh, I guess connecting that, because kind of our culture identities. What other identities would you say that you have, or that you, I guess, like how you identify?
Yeah, I mean, I identify as she, her, which I know pronouns are such a huge thing in order to respect everyone. So that's super important to, just put out there in terms of, our identities. And then another thing I personally identify with is being a ginger in a world where there are not so many redheads.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another thing that I think really defines me, because you can point me out in the crowds if you really, really pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. My pronouns are also she, her, and yeah, I kind of agree. Like we both have very curly hair, so that's kind of, yeah, I feel like that's something like you get known for. And you're like your big curls and everything. But yeah, I know, I love your hair, by the way. It's like, yeah, it's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like one of those little things that define you, because people aren't used to it, and it's a beautiful difference.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if you, but like I struggled with that for like a very long time, until like honestly recently, where I was like, oh yeah, I love my hair, because that wasn't, because I think, yeah, like now I'm like, it's beautiful, it's like you said, a beautiful difference. But like kind of when you're growing up, you're like, oh god, like I'm different, and like no one else has like curly hair, like, and then you don't really, yeah, and you don't see, like, I feel like I never really saw like just like really curly hair or whatever, like I wasn't surrounded by that. So like I would like wear my hair up all the time. Like I literally had like teachers in high school, and like they're like, I didn't realize your hair was like so big and curly, and I was like, yeah, because like I would just wear it up all the time. But now I'm like, I don't know, I just
embrace
like, I'm
the
like,
curl.
I literally like, yeah,
embrace the
that's such
curl.
a phrase, like embrace the curl. Like if you have curly hair, embrace it, because it is beautiful, and like you can do like so much stuff with it. I don't know. But yeah, and I think it's kind of like everyone kind of goes on those journeys, like, we're talking about hair, but like I feel like in kind of different aspects of people's lives, there's always a journey from like, oh, like maybe you're like insecurity, but now you're like, oh, I love that about myself. And yeah, but I love that like beautiful difference. I love that. Yeah.
And I think it's like another kind of identity, something that's just different and unique, and something that, a lot of people don't see. And like you were saying, it was kind of something that we kind of hid just because, it was different. And being able to embrace that now is very empowering. And I mean, I know we're talking about hair, but it goes for a lot of different things.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of different, yeah, it's like can be broad kind of in that, just like embracing who you are and like just like how you're born, and yeah, just like I feel like also like what makes you feel good and like comfortable, and I think maybe like don't always realize that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, since we're continuing on the topic of identity, we should talk about what does our FGEN identity mean to us. So if you want to take the floor on this one first.
Sure. I think my FGEN identity, it's definitely like it wasn't until like high school. I think when I was like applying for colleges and stuff where like it really was like, oh, you're like FGEN, you're first generation, like because I think going to school, like kind of my experience was like I didn't know a lot of other people who were first gen, or like both their parents went to college. Like my mom didn't go to college, and then my dad only went to 2 years. And I feel like I never really like, talked about it because I think my parents have worked like really hard, literally the hardest workers I know to like get where they are. And I think now it's kind of like, oh, you have to go to college to like do something, you know what I mean? Like, and I was like, my parents have succeeded so much, and I'm like really proud of that. And I think it was kind of just like FGen was kind of like, I think I was thinking of it in like a negative way, kind of almost, I think, for a lot of my life. And then when I got to college, and then I was a mentee in the FGen program my freshman year. And it was just with pride, and like you talk about it with pride, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm first gen. And it's, and there's other people, like there's a community of other people that are also in that same situation, and kind of like you can connect with them with the pressures you might feel or just certain struggles, and have like conversations about it, and you just feel like less alone. And so I think my FGen identity has definitely grown, and then being like a mentor and talking to like you and like my other mentees, I just like, it's like I don't think I would have like gone through like the year that we've had and just all this stuff without like this program, because it means a lot. And just like connecting with people in that way. And yeah, so I think I've definitely learned to embrace my FGen identity in like the last like few years for sure. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm similar. I never realized that I was an FGen student until applying to college, and then it was like it hit me, and I was like, "Whoa, like this is weird," because I've always had to go through the entirety of high school, of course, by myself, and I felt really alone, especially since my parents couldn't really relate to me with it and the different changes that was happening. And then going into college, and that journey of applying was definitely difficult because when I had questions, I couldn't go to my parents and ask because they didn't know the answers. So I felt very alone. And that's when I really realized that I was an FGEM student. But I have learned to embrace it because there's a beauty in the fact of being able to change the patterns of, generations of my family. And I'm pretty sure my family would say that they're very proud of me for, doing something different and actually going and chasing my dreams by furthering my education. And that's a huge part of my identity as an FGEN student. And also being able to get all of these new experiences and be able to share them with my family. And I think they enjoy hearing those stories, especially since they didn't have the opportunities to go out and do that for themselves, especially since money was a huge thing and resources were also very low. But yeah, I think that's part that really identifies me when I talk about, you know, my FGen identity, especially because my family is super important. And I mean, my mom especially, she has always encouraged me to go out and really chase my dreams, and I appreciate and I love her for that, because without her, I would probably not have, you know, chased my dreams and gone to college to, you know, become a nurse eventually. So, you know, it's part of that identity that I'm thankful for. Yeah.
And I think like, especially, I think that's kind of like a motivation. Like I want my family to be proud of me, but also like through my education and through like work, like I can give back to them, because like it's like they've given so much to me that like I can repay that for them. Like I feel like that's like also one of like my dreams, is just like be able to give that back to them someday, because all that hard work and stuff, like I think you want that to pay off for them in a way, like they're connected to that, but also like individually you're chasing your dreams like you said, and with their support for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely have to agree. I mean, there's like a huge part of me that wants to, you know, give back to my mom, especially because she's my biggest support, and she has literally worked her butt off to get me to where I am and be able to support me so that I am able to go out and really follow my dreams. And I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the same for my brother, as now that he's going to be going through that same process. But I mean, like I was telling him, at least now that I went through it and I had to figure all of this out on my own, at least now he has someone to be there and be able to help him, which I think he'll also appreciate. So yeah.
My brother just graduated from University of Portland, so I would say he was also big support too, because just like going before me and figuring that out and stuff. So shout out to the family.
Yes, of course, always.
Yes, always. This is a interesting question. I feel like, are you a person that values change? If so, how does your FGen identity and cultural identities inspire you to achieve that change?
Yeah, I personally am sometimes back and forth with change. I embrace it, but at the same time, there's some things that I don't want to change. And it really depends on what the change is. But in general, I do like change just because change actually allows us to grow as a person and grow as a community, which is super important so that we can end up flourishing in the world and in our communities and in our culture. And I mean, being an FGen who comes from a Hispanic background, I mean, that really brings to the table a whole new perspective, especially when working with different communities, because I mean, we are a big overall country and community of melting pot. And that's super important to be able to look at these different cultures and different identities and be able to bring not just respect to them, but also be able to incorporate them into all of those changes that happen nationally.
Yeah. Oh, that was very well. Yeah, that's so true. I definitely agree with that. Change, like you said, allows us to grow individually and communitively, because I feel like that's, like you said, that's how you learn about more cultures and like, yeah, like respecting people and seeing, you know, their identities and what you can learn from other people. And I think especially the FGen community, like I think that's what's so beautiful, is because people share their stories and you can learn so much from what they've experienced, and maybe something like you haven't had to go through before, and you're listening and you're hearing their story, and to change maybe a perspective you had, or the lack of perspective you had on something, and now you're like, oh, I see you. And I think that's really, really important. And change can be difficult sometimes, because I think you like your routine, you like certain things, but yeah, I think it's like once you like push yourself out of that, you're like, oh wow, it's like a whole new world. And yeah, you just learn so much and you grow. And I feel like that never stops, and it should never stop, because I feel like we should always be changing and learning and growing in some way or another, for sure. But that was
Yeah, and I
beautifully
mean,
said.
yeah. Well, and I also have to agree with you, especially within this past year. Everything really had to be changed and adjusted with the pandemic, and coming in as a first generation student into college, completely unaware of what to expect, because of course I couldn't fall and rely on my family because of the fact that they never got to experience that. It was kind of an odd thing, and something that was difficult to adjust to, especially with the added layer of the actual pandemic. And that was a huge change. But I think being able to adjust to change allows for that growth, and being able to really just adjust to the different things that happened and occurred, especially when something happens so quickly and you're not prepared for it at all. So that was another very important little topic I wanted to touch on briefly, just because everything really shifted.
And then I think coming out of it, like kind of now, it's just I feel like everyone's more stronger and like resilient from it. It's like you kind of don't take things for granted, I feel like we're always like doing stuff, and I think especially like in this year and everything, it's like you want to like be present in your life, and you have a lot of gratitude for what you have, and also how you can share that with others and be there for others too, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and well, kind of speaking on change, we should move the topic a little bit over to challenges. So the next question would be, what challenges have you faced, if any, since you decided to be the first in your family to get a college degree?
I think it's like interesting because I have an older brother who just graduated, but I think going in, like I had him kind of the college experience, but he's a totally different major than I am. So like I was like, thankfully my mentor, shout out to Kendra, was a nursing student, because I was like, I don't really know what the nursing program is like. I mean, you obviously have what they tell you, but like not like kind of that. And some challenges that like I think especially in the last year is just kind of like being home, and like even like I think it's just like having the routine, but then also like how that correlates with like your home life and like everyone else around you. And I don't know, I feel like sometimes it's like we kind of put pressure and like expectations on ourselves, and that can be kind of challenging to like work through. Like you're like, okay, I got this, but then I think it can be overwhelming because you are the first, and you're like kind of like the first doing what you're doing. And I think that's kind of a challenge, I would say, I've kind of faced, because I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well, but I would say that.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of touched on like one of the biggest challenges, especially with being an FGEN student, is not knowing what to expect. And honestly, if it wasn't for you, Grace, I would be so lost in a lot of things, just trying to figure out my way around, just in general. Like self-serve, that's very confusing on its own, and especially growing up where I wasn't around a lot of technology. I'm kind of called an old lady because I don't understand it 100%.
Me too. I'm so bad at it.
So yeah, so it's like it's that adjustment and that change, and then not being able to fall back and rely on people in my family because they've never really been around it. It's definitely challenging, especially when nowadays there's a lot that relies on technology, especially with all of the extra little things that we end up having to do as college students. So like I said, I'm very thankful for you in helping me get through those challenges.
Yeah, technology sometimes I'm like, I think for like sciences we have to use Pearson, and there's like a certain thing where you can't open the website if you have like cookies or something. There was this one day and I could not get it to work, and I was like, oh my god, I can't get my assignment done. Like, yeah, but
yeah, technology, it is a great blessing, but it's also a great curse.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm like, if you understand that, I totally respect you, and I might need your help sometimes.
Huge respect for people. Huge respect for the people who understand it.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good question. Looking back at your previous years or first year at UP, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the biggest advice I would give to myself now that I've completed my first year in college is try to be a tad bit more open in terms of like being out there. I'm a very introverted person, and that was very difficult trying to make friends online for my first semester. And I think if I, I was always kind of like the icebreaker in breakout rooms, but I mean, talking with random people online is definitely interesting. And I think that it's difficult to be able to do that, but I would have just given myself to be like, come on, just push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone. I think I kind of followed that a bit more when I was actually on campus for my second semester, but I think that's still some advice that I should take to heart for the next few years, and hopefully I'll listen to myself.
Yeah, I agree. I think being an introverted person, especially on online school, is just like, oh, it's a great struggle. And
oh yeah,
because like the struggle is always like, you're like, okay, like I will say something now, like in your head, and then you're like, okay, I'm going, and then it's either like someone else said something, or then the teacher moves on and you're like, oh god, and then you're like, I'm not gonna get my participation points that I need. Oh yeah, I think that was definitely that's like good advice, because I think especially if you are more introverted, or that's just like something like that's hard. I think kind of what I've kind of tried is like definitely going out of your comfort zone, even if it's awkward, because I feel like there's always like the fear of things being awkward, and then you're like, oh god, like, and then start overthinking, and then it's like a rabbit hole. Sorry about that. My mom came in. Okay. But yeah, I think that's like, I think over this year too, I feel like, I don't know if it should, but like there's been a lot of like self-reflection kind of, and I think maybe becoming more self-aware. And I think that's something like I really like. I'm very much an introverted person. I've always been like the quiet person like in my life, but I think pushing yourself to do things that like might be uncomfortable, and that you kind of like just like don't come easy, I think it's kind of getting past that hill, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because I think once you get past that, you're kind of like, oh okay, like I survived and like I'm okay. And I think that's really important, because it's like I feel like I've, in my experience, it's always been like the lead up that's just like the most stressful, the most overwhelming, but then it's like once you finish you're like, okay, like that wasn't too bad, like I'm okay. And I think that's advice I would give for myself. I think it was always there in my head, I think, to be like, okay, like I think freshman year, like talk to people, like get to know people, just say hi, like don't think about, like don't overthink it, like you're human, like just talk to people. Because I think like having anxiety too, it's just like I'd probably say like maybe like get out more. I was like like I would talk to people in like classes and stuff, but like kind of doing stuff in the dorm and stuff, I wasn't like super good at because I'm like, I don't know if like any other people who are really introverted, but you get like tired and you get like kind of exhausted socially. So like your social will just like bubble just goes down kind of. But yeah, I think your advice of just like going out of your comfort zone and like, yeah, it's like the small steps. You're like, okay, like I said hi to everybody in the breakout room, or like I think the worst was saying something in front of the whole class because you're like, wow, there's like a lot of people on the Zoom call right now. And like, yeah, I feel like the breakout rooms, I don't know, kind of mixed feelings. It like depended on I don't know, but yeah, for sure. That's really good advice. And I think it's interesting too, because like before COVID, it, I don't know, because then you're like, oh, should I have done more? Because like now, can't necessarily do that. I guess sometimes you think about, then you're like, well, we're here in the present, I guess.
I think we should move on to a little bit of our more, speaking a little bit from the positive side in terms of just advice, moving towards like our greatest accomplishment at the moment. So if you want to take the floor on this one, Grace.
I think one, maybe just like getting through the last year, maybe like one of my nursing professors last semester gave really good advice of like just kind of like taking each day by day kind of, and I think that really helped. And then like I had some professors that were like, you do realize you guys are like doing like something no one's ever done before, and that's like pretty cool. And like because I think in the moment but then you stop and think and you're like, wow, like no one has ever done this before, and that's like really cool. Oh god, I have such a hard time thinking about these questions. I'm like, I need to ask somebody to like get there now. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being thrown into my first year of college in this really weird year with the pandemic, and actually being able to get through it and complete my first year with all of these extra challenges, it was my biggest accomplishment, especially, starting my first year in college at my house on a computer was, definitely difficult. And I was not expecting that at all to happen. Of course, we have some of those little expectations, but being able to really get through it and really be able to push through it, as much as it was very difficult, even being on campus, just because, there was like one class that I had in person and the rest were still online. It was definitely one of the biggest challenges that I'm really glad I was able to complete and really get through.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very proud of you. I know I've said that before, but I'm very, very proud of you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have such like, I feel like they're really deep questions. I'm like, oh god, do I know the answers to these? But that's the beauty of them, because they make you like
make you think, and you don't know what's gonna be said.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, oh my god. It's like the what's that expression? It's like the light bulb goes off or something. And you're like, oh my god, I learned something about myself. I'm more self-aware.
Of course. How it is.
I guess we could go into more. Is there anything else like you would say about like your FGEN identity, or just any struggles or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful for you as my mentor through the the FGEN program and just the FGEN program in general. I mean, I am sure if I wasn't recommended to you guys, I would be so lost. So it's one of those things where I'm grateful for, but I also kind of recommend and talk about, because there's a lot in college and all these different resources and everything that are not difficult to navigate, but can be kind of confusing and
like overwhelming kind of.
overwhelming. Yeah, overwhelming to just kind of go through and figure out without any help, especially as an FGEN student and not knowing what to expect, especially just because, you know, none of my family went to college and was able to experience that. And I think that was one of like the biggest things was it's very intimidating. That's what I was looking for, intimidating.
Yeah.
Just because there's a lot, and yeah, it's one of those beautiful things, but it's also kind of like a thing that I don't really say much about being an FGEN student. That's a part of my identity, just because, you know, like you were saying earlier, you put those expectations on yourself and you're like, oh, I have to know this. I can't just not know this and not have to figure it out. And it's just one of those things. So
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, I feel like it's kind of like too, it's, I think kind of like the fear of asking questions sometimes. I feel like that's like personally, that's something I've struggled with because, you know, like you're like, oh, I don't want people like, because yeah, you're like, okay, I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about. And like, but it's like the realization where you're like, okay, you don't know everything. Like, it's like, it's funny because like, kind of like having anxiety and stuff, like the teachers would always be like, there's no like wrong questions or whatever, but then in your head you're like, but there is. Like, but I definitely think asking questions is like so important. That shouldn't be something that um you know, like it shouldn't be something that you're like fear to do, because it I think it just brings you more knowledge, and it a lot of people understand, you know, like that. Yeah, I think this program really helps, just like that one like step kind of, you know, if you have like a list, you're like doing the first list and then it's like checking it off and you like feel like just like a weight being lifted off your shoulders, and it's kind of like a
yeah. And like one of the other things too, just like briefly touching on your little ongoing on questions. I think it's also super difficult, especially being a first generation student, just because, you know, you're like, I'm pretty sure other people know this, but I don't. So I don't want to look like I'm behind or anything. But one thing that like I should really start listening to more, especially since I put so much on myself when asking questions, is I've always been told there are no stupid questions, because someone probably has the same question as you, and I really need to start taking that to heart. And I think a lot of
same here.
use that advice too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely need to take that, because yeah, I think it's like, you know, kind of just like getting out of your head, and you're just like, okay, like it's okay, and like yeah, I doubt there's no stupid questions. I personally need to remind myself that all the time.
Yeah. Me too.
But we're working on it. It's good.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Part
get
of
there.
our growth.
It is. We're always growing. We'll always get over the hill.
Yes.
I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm using so many analogies for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, should we do some more, I guess, like fun well, those are really fun. I think those questions are fun and they're really interesting.
Yeah. I think we should go more into like a little bit of personal questions. I mean, I think we both kind of saved these ones for the end. So
yeah.
we're going to take this next one.
Oh, I know which one. What is your favorite food?
I mean, we've talked about this, but my favorite food is chili rellenos, specifically the kind from, you know, my home state of New Mexico. You know, chili. I always get Christmas on my chili rellenos, so I have like double green chili, a little bit of red chili. It's absolutely amazing. For those of you out there listening, in New Mexico, it's a huge question. It's red or green, so we're talking about chili here. But there's also another little thing where Christmas isn't just the holiday and the season, it's also a food option where you both get red and green chili. So just so you guys aren't confused, but yeah, chili rellenos with Christmas, absolute favorite meal.
Yes, I remember we were talking about that, and I was like, my mouth is watering. Like, I was like, I need to come and visit you so I can eat all this like yummy food. Oh my god. Oh,
Well, I am planning on bringing a fresh box of green chili to roast in August.
Yes, I know. We are having dinners at my house.
Yeah, for sure.
My favorite food, I really love nachos. That's kind of like, I don't know if that's, but I really enjoy a good nacho, and yeah, or like tacos. I kind of like those kind of food, but I know I need to go and visit Victoria to get the authentic, because yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was like a lot of our conversation back in the first semester. Legit, like we would just talk about food.
Yes, but I know oh yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I need to just like eat some of this. Like, I think I would literally like crave certain foods after we talked, because I was like, oh, that sounds so good.
Yeah, for sure.
I love talking about food.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, me too. I can just go on about it. It's part of like the little like mini chef in me. But yeah, well, speaking of mini chef, we should move on to this question. So, what are some of your favorite hobbies, Grace?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know why I always have a hard time with like hobby, like the hobby question, because it's not really a hobby. I was gonna say like listening to music. That's not a hobby though.
Yeah, what's something you love to do?
Oh my God, I'm struggling so hard. I would say I would like to probably like do art more than I do. Like, I don't know. I think just kind of like painting or something. Like I've always wanted to do more of that. I don't do it a lot, but I guess that's like a hobby I've done before, but I, I want to do more. Oh my God, I'm just school, and then I really need to work on my hobbies, because usually I just like, if I'm not doing school, I'm like hanging out with my family, or like watching something like on like YouTube or Netflix or anything like that. But yeah, and then I really like poetry. I don't know. I feel like when I read poetry sometimes I feel just so understood, you know? Like, I'm like, oh my God, everything makes sense now. Yeah, mine are pretty boring. So what are your hobbies?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about this previously, but I mean, one of my biggest hobbies is photography, and
Oh my
that
God.
hobby is.
Can I shout you out really quick?
Yeah,
Okay,
go for
because
it. Go for it.
Victoria is such a good photographer. Oh my God, I can't even talk. Such a good photographer. I literally like, she gave me some beautiful like pictures that she printed, and I got one framed, and they're so amazing. Like, she's really good at photography. So I don't know if you want to, but yeah, I would definitely, if you ever meet her, definitely check it out, and because it's amazing, and I'm gonna have them hung up all over my walls in the future. So yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I just had to shout you.
Photography.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, photography is just like one of those biggest things, part of my life. I picked it up right before my grandma passed away. She was a huge photographer. She is my inspiration. She was someone who I wish I got to spend more time with before she passed, and it's something that I do to keep her memory alive. And I kind of do what she does and just try to capture the beauty of the world and not really have a set kind of just thing to do. So I'm kind of all over. One of my favorite things is to just capture, the little things that sometimes people just won't notice.
Mhm.
As you could probably tell, Grace, one of the photos I gave her was of the Santuario de Chimayo here in New Mexico at night. And it was just one of those things where, if you really don't go out of your way to just kind of like look at and appreciate, you're going to miss it. So
That's the one I got framed, and it's so beautiful. The lighting, like it's so beautiful, because the lighting, it kind of has like almost like it's just like a spooky vibe, but it's just like so beautiful. Like it's just, it's amazing. Yeah, you're so right, because the timing of when you took it and like everything like that, it just totally adds to the picture. And then when you see it, you're just like, oh my god, it's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. Yeah.
One of the things with it is my grandma used to strictly shoot on film, and film is kind of like a one shot is all you get kind of thing. And I try to keep that up with my digital camera in terms of just kind of keeping the photos as raw as possible, just because you can really just capture and really see not as much as the beauty as you would see in person, but just enough to keep that moment alive, which I think is super important, especially since, a picture really does speak 1,000 or more words, especially when,
Exactly.
capture like just a moment in time that is precious to someone. I mean, I can quickly go off on a little side story about it, but I was invited to first mass for one of my really, really good friends who was just ordained a priest in May. And I was able to capture the beautiful moment of his first time elevating the Eucharist and the chalice at a beautiful angle. And when I showed him the pictures earlier today, he was just very thankful that I was able to capture that moment in time, because it was something so special and just something so great that the actual professional photographer he had hired didn't capture. So it was nice to really just give that to him, and it's such a gift that he'll be able to have that forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what's so beautiful about your photography is that you're able to capture that, and like you just like feel through the photos, like you're like, oh, I feel like I'm there. And
with my photography, I try not to plan anything. I just kind of let it happen and just hope for the best, and usually it just comes out the way it should be. So yeah. And then, I mean, I also do, like I mentioned, I love cooking and baking. I'm the little chef of my family, and I've been super grateful that I have friends from different cultures who have been really bringing their culture to me and being able to share that with me through food, which I find super great and very thankful for. I mean, we've talked about this with
I know
volleyball.
that's like what you did for me. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. I learned so much about like the New Mexican culture through you because we were just talking about food, and it was
And I was, fortunate to be able to gift you a little basket and bring you a little taste of my home so you can experience it, this past semester, which is great. And I'm so glad I was able to do that for you. And then another little thing I love to do is music, just kind of keep that more creative side open, and just really also kind of touch base back with the part of my grandma who passed away, because she used to play guitar and she used to do a little bit of music. So it's another little tiny thing that was less known about her that I get to keep alive, which I also love.
exactly. I should have said baking. No, like when you said that, I was like, I can make some sugar cookies. Like, oh my god, I can't think of the moment, but
Oh, no,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But I think what you said about like keeping memories alive, like of people that you love through what you do, and you listen, like it's kind of like maybe you listen to certain artists because like my grandma loved the Gypsy Kings, so like when I listen to those songs, I'm just like, oh, like I just think of her, or like certain songs that have certain lyrics that connect. And because I think it's like what brought them so much joy like can bring you so much joy.
For
And
sure. Yeah, and I think it's
cool.
super important to do stuff that well, not just that you love, but also stuff that kind of brings you a bit of, closeness to the people that you're no longer able to be with, especially when you don't have the time or the opportunity to be around them while they're still alive, and be able to keep not just their memory alive, but also a part of our culture alive in terms of just food. Like with my family, food is a huge thing, and being able to be together as a community. And I mean, like, I know that's difficult with the pandemic, but we make do. So that's just
Exactly.
a thing. But yeah, baking is another really good one. Random side note, but I did just make a red velvet tres leches cake from scratch, which came out
Oh,
so good.
oh my god. Oh my god, that sounds so good.
Yeah,
Oh,
delicious.
Yeah, you're right. You're like a chef.
Yeah.
You need to teach me your ways.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Well, now that you have a kitchen,
I
I'll
know,
bring
yeah.
my chef's, I'm bringing my chef's knife because that's one of the best things to have is a really good knife because you're always that sounds a little it's
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
it's super important for cooking because you want to be able to get a perfect cut and not be able to worry about it. It's just like photography or just like some of these other hobbies, you only have one shot at it, especially when you're cooking for people and being able to bring something alive to them. Well, in terms of just community and being able to fill them and bring nourishment, which is super important. And then, so I can go on about that. But
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love it.
yeah.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Since I touched on music a little bit, Grace, what's your favorite music genre?
Oh, um, oh God, I feel like I'm all over the place. Like I have this one playlist and it's just like so many different because I grew up kind of like on oldies, so like James Taylor, Stevie Wonder. So like that I'd say like acoustic pop, I guess. Like I love me some like slower songs, like sad songs.
And stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like Ed Sheeran kind of. I would say that like oldies, but then also just like, like Spanish music. I feel like that's been really important to me with my grandma, just like kind of connecting to that. And it, I think what's so beautiful a lot of times about like if you're listening to someone who speaks a different language or listening to music, like it's like the feeling is like, like you don't necessarily need to understand everything to get that feeling. And you're just like, this is a good song. Like, oh, I love like me. Oh my God, that was not good English. Like a choir, like, because I did choir in high school. So I love a good song with a choir in the back or anything like that. Like, just like that soulfulness. Oh, so good. Yeah. Like harmonies. I'm a big harmonies person in songs. So, like, if there's a good
Oh,
harmony,
or
yeah.
like playing music and especially not like choir music or like like marching band music. I was fortunate to do music from around the world, especially like traditional folk music and harmonies.
Folk music. Yeah.
Biggest and most important thing because it really brings life to a song, so I totally have to
So true. Like, one of my favorite songs is like Dust in the Wind from Kansas. Oh my God. That's right. Yeah. Because the harmonies in that are just like insane. And then, yeah, you're right. Like folk music is yeah, that's also another one where,
or
oh, so good. Oh,
one
yeah,
of my favorite groups to like learn harmonies from is like taking it way back all the way to the 20s, like back when recording started happening, is the Carter family. Their harmonies, especially adding harmonies with instruments, oh, so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
And
Literally, people who write songs, do music, I'm like, they're so genius and talented because I'm also a big musical fan. I love musicals. And my mom's side of the family, I got that from them. So like I literally was on a card with my grandpa and the whole time we talked about it and just how people just like make this music and it's just and the understanding you have to have of everything and oh it's so beautiful. Yeah, I get like so excited talking about it because it's just
oh
oh
yeah.
it's so cool. So cool to me. And oh yeah, just how yeah. I have no words. It's just amazing, yeah.
I mean, like you mentioned, I'm also a very eclectic person when it comes to music. Like I don't have one genre I listen to, and I
Yeah.
not like driving with me, and I'm like I have my phone on with music because it'll be at a very soulful song 1 minute, and then all of a sudden you're listening to rock music or sometimes
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
all the way back to ballad. And so yeah, it's just one of those things where it like really depends on the mood and it really depends on what's happening. And then of course, Spanish music is also something I really listen to. Like one of my go-to is Quintanilla, just because she has some beautiful music, and just being able to connect and really just feel like a part of my Spanish culture. And then also just listening to her songs. I remember growing up on them and just having them play and always just be like, oh, I know this song right off the bat. So yeah.
Are you better with like knowing the artist or like knowing the lyrics?
It depends. I'm pretty good with both. I try to listen to more music that has more of a meaning to it, or at least a meaning to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is more on the feel good side, just so that it really fuels my soul in terms of just creativity and music. So
That's so
really
true.
really depends.
Yeah. I'm like I'm really bad with like artists. Like I'll hear a song, I'm like, oh yeah, is this like, especially like certain bands like Kansas or like the Eagles. I'm like, wait, who is this again? Like I know the songs because like I heard them growing up, but yeah. But yeah, just like what makes you feel good. Because I think that's maybe like really just like self-care, very like nursing. But I think what kind of feel like music, especially like I think for me, is just like kind of that. Like if I just like put my headphones in or I'm just listening to music, I feel like, I don't know, de-stressed and just overall better. I feel like so music is, I love music. What would we do without music, I guess?
It's part of life. Yeah.
It literally, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I guess the last question is, what is your favorite movie, TV show, or book?
Yeah. Well, that one's definitely a difficult question.
So difficult.
Music taste, it's all over the place. I'm
Mhm.
for sure my favorite TV show in the entire world is Doctor Who. Not
Yep.
the more modern Who, just because I like how it combines a lot of different things I have. And it also is a show that really makes you think because of the time travel. So
Yeah.
yeah, hands down, favorite TV show. But on the movie and book side, that is a hard choice.
Yeah, honestly, whenever I think of my favorite movie, I'm like, what is it? Because I feel like, is your favorite movie kind of like determined on like like if you can watch it over again, or is it just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Maybe.
different. I mean, like, there's also those movies like comfort movies. Like for me, it's Disney
Yeah.
movies, classic Disney
Yeah.
movies. I can watch them over and over again, but they're more of like a comfort movie. Like, I can just
Yeah.
watch Disney and then all of a sudden I'm happy and like, oh yeah, I can conquer the world basically.
Yeah. That's like me in like Marvel movies. Definitely my comfort movies. Like I've watched those like so many times, and yeah, I'm like, oh, like yeah, you just feel better. You're like, oh my God, like, and then you like quote them too, and you're like, oh God, I've watched this too many times.
Oh yeah, it's always Disney and Marvel that I quote the most. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if you and Doctor Who too, if I'm talking about adding TV shows in there too, and it's like, oh, I can't. I'm just joking with this one, but it's like, if you can't understand this reference, it's like, can we really be friends? But of course,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely joking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like true. It's like when you find someone that like gets the reference, you're like, oh my God.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's definitely movies like I grew up with that like my dad has played a lot of times. That like I can like quote lines from. Yeah, because like I feel like just certain things like have like connections. So you're like, oh my God, this reminds me of like this, or yeah, TV shows. I would say my favorite TV show is, it's called Grand Hotel. It's on Netflix, but it's like the 2013 version. So it's like El Grand Hotel, I think that's how you pronounce it. So it's like all in Spanish and stuff. It's a great show though, because it has like the mystery, the drama, the like romance. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, I could definitely watch that. Favorite book. I really want to be more of a reader because I'm not much, but that's like my goal as like years go on. I'm like, I want to get more into reading as something that can be like a de-stressor or something like that. But I realized like I think autobiographies are kind of interesting to read. Like that's something I like kind of realized more recently, because it's just like so interesting because I think I saw like an actor in an interview talk about it, but it's just you get to see like someone's life and like especially if they're famous or something, it's like you kind of see one thing and then like they tell your story and it's like, oh, like everyone struggles, everyone, and then you're like, and just like how they get from like one place in their life to another place and like how it got them there. And yeah, I think, yeah, those are kind of interesting. And then poetry. I love poetry. So,
Yeah, I think that covers all of it.
okay.
Thank you for listening. If you're a first generation student, staff, or faculty member at the University of Portland who is interested in speaking on this podcast, particularly with a friend, classmate, or mentor of yours who is also first gen, don't hesitate to reach out to John and Norman to schedule a time and place to record. Our emails are heartj22@up.edu and hilker22@up.edu. Support for this podcast comes from the Public Research Fellows Program and the First Generation Program of UP's Shepherd Academic Resource Center. The FGEN experience at the University of Portland was created by Melanie Moave. Editing and sound by Jonathan Hart and Norman Hilker. Funding provided by the Public Research Fellows Program.